Since the dawn of humanity, evolution has guided the path of our species. From primitive hominids wielding fire to modern humans unlocking the secrets of the atom. Over millennia, genetic drift, natural selection, and random mutation sculpted the genome of Homo sapiens, giving rise to intellect, language, and innovation. With the advent of modern science, the manipulation of molecules and the discovery of atomic structures unleashed a new era of technological advancement and unforeseen consequences. The 20th century brought with it the splitting of the atom, a watershed moment that not only redefined warfare and energy, but also acted as a trigger for widespread genetic anomalies. Ionizing radiation, experimental serums, and cosmic rays began awakening superhuman abilities in individuals across the globe. But hidden deep within our DNA lie dormant sequences, molecular blueprints encoded with extraordinary potential. These latent genes, catalyzed by the pressures of a changing world, herald the next stage of human evolution. And high above the Earth, a mission gone awry bathed 4 astronauts in cosmic radiation, giving rise to the Fantastic Four, each granted unique and awe-inspiring powers that redefined the boundaries of biology and physics. At a New York science demonstration, a bite from a radioactive spider transformed young Peter Parker into an agile and wall-crawling Spider-Man. And elsewhere, an accidental overdose of gamma radiation mutated Dr. Bruce Banner into an unstoppable force known as the Hulk. His very rage a weapon of mass destruction. From this crucible of science and chaos emerged beings whose power defied the laws of nature. As these superpowered individuals emerged, society began to grapple with a new reality, and by 1963, the world had taken its first steps into the Age of Heroes, with the formation of Earth's mightiest defenders, the Avengers, a team uniting gods, geniuses, and living legends to confront threats no one hero could face alone. Some were shaped by accident, science, or design, but others were born with their gifts. Homo sapiens superior, mutants, whose abilities surface mostly during adolescence, marked by the distinctive X gene. Now this here is the story of evolution accelerated, of science and mutation intertwining. It is the saga of Homo sapiens superior, a species born not just of survival, but of power, purpose, and the promise of what comes next. This is the story of the Children of the Atom. Uncanny X-Men, issue number 1. Westchester County, New York. In an exclusive private school, a strange silent man sits motionless. He is brooding and alone with his indescribable thoughts. Eventually his meditation comes to an end, and while he is still remaining completely motionless, a sharp commanding thought spreads from his mind, ringing out and echoing through the great halls of the mansion. This man is Professor Charles Francis Xavier, and he telepathically calls out for his X-Men, ordering them to appear at once because class is now in session, and adding that tardiness will be punished. Within the memory of mankind, never has there been a teacher such as Professor X, and never have there been students such as these, the Uncanny X-Men, the strangest teens of all. And in no time, these X-Men have assembled and joined their teacher. Cyclops, Iceman, the Angel, and the Beast have all made their way to the room Charles Xavier is sitting in. Some of them in more unorthodox ways than normal humans would or even could. While the Angel and Cyclops tend to Professor Charles Xavier, making sure he's seated comfortably in his chair, Iceman grabs the Beast by his arm and tells him he has a new trick with his frosting powers to show him. The Beast tells Iceman to let go of his arm, which has instantly been covered with a layer of ice. Annoyed with this new trick of Iceman, and feeling insulted as he, and the rest of the team for that matter, gets called a softie, the Beast tells Iceman to just wait until his arm thaws out, because he will then make Iceman eat those words. But Iceman does not seem impressed by his threats in the slightest. The Angel grabs a hold of the Beast's belt and tells the two of them there will not be any fighting during class. Professor Xavier telepathically thanks Angel for interrupting the two of them and tells them that it's now time to begin their lessons. He says the Beast will be first and tells Cyclops to prepare the training machine. Cyclops informs Xavier that everything is ready, and Xavier congratulates everyone that they are receiving his thoughts perfectly. Soon there will be no need for him to use his voice to speak to them at all. The professor then orders the Beast to grab a hold of the wire above his head as fast as he can. But it has to be done with his toes, and he has only a second and a half to do so. After that, Xavier tells the Beast to start spinning, faster and faster, making himself an impossible target if he's being shot at by an enemy. And then, at Xavier's command, he wants the Beast to launch himself and perform a specific maneuver through all kinds of obstacles. Next, the professor wants the Beast to start a balancing exercise on a vertical rod, immediately starting off on his index finger, and to maintain that balance while Cyclops slackens the tension of the object the Beast is doing this balancing on, and it starts to bend. Even though the Beast almost loses his balance, he manages to recover and lands on his feet. Next up, it's the Angel's turn. Xavier makes sure that the Angel clearly receives his thoughts and that he understands he cannot make a single mistake while they test his wing reflexes in today's training exercise. Angel responds by saying that making mistakes is what Homo sapiens do, but not the Angel. Professor Xavier corrects Angel to not be overconfident, as he almost scorched his wings in a pillar of fire. Angel acknowledges this and says that he will do better next time. He then avoids the second obstacle by passing through two parts of some kind of hydraulic press, which would have flattened him had he not been in time. He then maneuvers himself through a carousel of sharp objects, and this is the first time he does so without a slip. But his excitement in doing so, and his overconfidence which comes along with it, gets cut short, because he is suddenly overcome by a sound concussion, which, as the professor telepathically informs him, will test his survival ability. Xavier tells him he must not fall to the ground, that he must keep flapping his wings, and he assures Angel that he can do it as long as he keeps flapping. As the Angel approaches Xavier, he tells him it was a close one, but he thinks he's alright now. Xavier agrees and tells him he is beginning to master the hovering maneuver and that it may someday actually save his life, and the Angel's training session is now done. Iceman asks Professor Xavier when he will stop taking it easy with him just because he's a couple years younger than the rest. He asks Xavier how he's ever going to graduate at this rate. Xavier tells Iceman that some things cannot be rushed, and tells him that he has 5 minutes of free play to do what he wishes. Iceman figures that if he's going to get treated like a kid, he might as well act like one. He finds himself a carrot and some buttons and prepares himself to make the others laugh. He seems to have forgotten that Professor Xavier can still read his thoughts clearly. Xavier telepathically tells the Beast to stand ready and that they will test Iceman's reflexes within 15 seconds. Iceman then turns around and tells everyone to look at him. He has turned himself into a snowman and says that he's going to stand on someone's lawn if he doesn't get something to do around here soon. Xavier tells Beast to throw a bowling ball at Iceman, and he does so, while giving him an urgent warning. Iceman quickly creates a curved ice shield which reroutes the bowling ball right back at the Beast. Xavier tells Iceman that he did good, and that his reflexes under pressure are astonishing for a 16-year-old kid. The Beast nonchalantly catches the ball again, behind his back, and jokes that they might actually challenge the Harlem Globetrotters one day. Xavier tells him to be silent, because the lesson is not yet over. Cyclops still needs to be tested. And as a matter of fact, Cyclops is about to berate both Beast and Iceman while calling them clowns. He tells them to be more careful next time, because that bowling ball only just missed Xavier, and he says that that kind of horseplay isn't funny. The Beast tells him to stop grandstanding, and that they knew what they were doing, and that the Professor knows that Iceman and him don't want the Professor to get hurt any more than Cyclops himself does. In the meantime, Professor Xavier telepathically tells Cyclops to pay attention and that this is his test. He wants Cyclops to assume that both the Beast and Iceman are his enemies, and that he wants him to take them out of action, without causing them any serious injury. And Cyclops follows Xavier's command like a well-trained soldier. Slowly and silently, Cyclops adjusts a small lever at the side of his visor, and the visor itself opens wider and wider, until a beam of crimson concussive force blasts out from his eyes and hits the Beast, knocking him off his feet and literally into one of the walls behind him. Cyclops then aims his focus on Iceman, who has used his powers to craft a shield of ice in the form of a giant cube around him. Cyclops tells the Iceman that he's wasting his time, because that wall of ice will not block out his energy ray. Iceman responds by saying that maybe it won't, but it will surely slow it down by a lot. Cyclops then opens his visor even wider and the ice starts cracking and crumbling, much to the chagrin of Iceman, who starts complaining how this isn't fair. Cyclops tells him that for the career they're training for, there is no such thing as fair, and he then tells Iceman to protect himself, because his eye beam is about to smash through. In the meantime, unbeknownst to Cyclops, Professor Xavier has given the telepathic command to both the Angel and the Beast to help their fellow teammate Iceman, who has gotten knocked off his feet as well by Cyclops. It's the three of them against one now, and Iceman thanks the Professor because he could use a little help. But Xavier tells him that this is not just for his sake. A couple of minutes of roughhouse is good for all of them, to help them let off some steam. Then suddenly, several minutes later, all four of Xavier's students receive a sharp and piercing, commanding telepathic thought from him. He tells them that it's enough, that the lesson is over, and that they must turn their energies to different matters. He tells them to return to their places at once. Stunned by the force and explosive power of Xavier's mental command, the X-Men recoil and draw back, forgetting all about their little brawl, and anxious as to what will happen next. Xavier congratulates them all, telling them that they have mastered reading his thoughts perfectly and that he will now return to normal speech communication. He also tells them that at this very moment he can sense a taxi approaching the main gate to the school's premises, and that within that vehicle there will be a new pupil, and a most attractive young lady at that. The guys look out the window, apart from Iceman, who says he's glad he's not a wolf like them. The others are indeed stunned by the new pupil's looks, and the Beast says that he's suddenly in no rush to graduate from this place. Curious about the new arrival, the guys will now change to their civilian clothes, while Professor Xavier welcomes the new student. Once downstairs, Xavier tells the new student that he's glad she received his message. She says that it all seems so strange and mysterious to her. How she wasn't supposed to tell anyone but her parents that she's coming here, nor did Xavier tell her anything about the course of study. She demands to know what kind of school this is exactly. The professor responds to her and addresses her as Miss Gray. He says to her that he thinks she already suspects. He then tells her that he can read her thoughts quite clearly and that he knows all about her unusual talent. She, just like the other four students at this most exclusive school, is a mutant. She possesses an extra power, one which ordinary humans do not, and because of this reason he calls his students X-Men, for the extra powers they possess. He then introduces Miss Gray, whose first name is Jean, to the rest of the X-Men, who have just arrived in the same room as well. Hank McCoy is the Beast, Bobby Drake is nicknamed Iceman, Slim Summers is also called Cyclops, and Warren Worthington is codenamed the Angel. And she herself will be known as Marvel Girl. The guys huddle up around her and Hank asks her why Xavier calls her Marvel Girl and what powers she possesses. Warren can't help but to make a flirty remark, and Bobby tells him that if he had Warren's line, he'd shoot himself. Jean tells them that they will all learn about her in due time. Hank says that there's no time like the present and tells Slim to bring the lady a chair. Slim says that he would bring her the whole room if she would ask him to, but Jean says that's really not necessary. And it becomes quite obvious as to why that is, as the chair suddenly gets pulled right from his hands and seemingly slides itself forward, right in front of Jean, and Hank only barely managed to jump out of the way. Jean tells them to not be alarmed. She just thought she would save them the trouble. Jean then sits herself down on the chair and tells the professor that she believes they can now continue with their interview. Slim is still confused as to what just happened, and Xavier suggests that it might be better if Jean would demonstrate some more. Jean then tells everyone that all of her life she has had to conceal her power, and that she must admit that it's a pleasure she can now display and practice her telekinesis openly, without fear of being discovered. She then tells everyone to observe a book which is lying on the desk and how she's able to browse through the pages without having to touch it. But it eventually gets boring, and so she can return the book with the sole power of her mind and places the book through the air on a cabinet right between other books. Xavier thanks Jean for the demonstration and will now tell her more about the school. He tells her that his parents had worked on the first atomic bomb project. That he, like all of them, is a mutant as well. Possibly the first mutant even. He has the power to read minds and to project his own thoughts into the brain of others. But when he was young, normal people feared him, distrusted him even. He then realized the human race is not yet ready to accept those with extra powers, which is why he decided to build a safe haven, a school for X-Men. Within the confines of the school, mutants can stay unsuspected by normal humans, while they try and learn to use their powers for the benefit of mankind, to help those who would distrust them if they knew of their existence. He then continues by saying that due to an accident during his childhood, he must remain in his wheelchair. But through a master control panel, he has many devices at his command, and through his mind, he will always be in touch with his X-Men. The professor then leaves so the students can get to know each other better. Hank McCoy immediately puckers up and tells Jean he would like to be the first to welcome her to the X-Men, as he moves in close while calling her beautiful. This startles Jean, and Warren tells Hank to take his oversized paws off of her. Jean tells Warren to not worry, because she's not exactly helpless, as they can all clearly see after Jean simply lifts Hank up in the air, which makes Bobby and Warren laugh, and Bobby jokingly says he hopes she keeps that big ape up there forever. Jean starts rotating Hank through the air, and Hank says that he was only trying to be friendly. He asks to let him down again before he gets dizzy, and this is embarrassing. Jean agrees to do so and mockingly dumps him on the couch instead of slowly landing him on his feet. Jean says that she hopes she wasn't too rough on him, and Xavier tells her not at all. They do not use kids' gloves over here. He says that they have to make their training as rough as possible to prepare themselves for their mission in the outside world. And that is something that has been on Jean's mind. She asks the professor what exactly their real mission is. Xavier explains to her that there are many mutants currently walking the planet, with more being born each year, and not all of them want to help mankind. Some of them even hate the human race and wish to destroy it. Some feel that mutants should be the real rulers of the Earth, and it will be the X-Men's job to protect mankind from those evil mutants. At that very moment, just one of such mutants is preparing to launch a strike in a secret laboratory near the military installation called Cape Citadel. This man, this mutant, has been planning and preparing for months, and the moment is now at hand for the payoff. According to his vision, the human race no longer deserves domination of the planet. According to him, the day of the mutants is upon us. The first phase of his plan will be to show the world his power, to make Homo sapiens bow down to Homo superior. Today is the day that the mightiest rocket of all is going to be launched, and the government has used maximum security precautions, so that nothing can prevent its successful flight. But here, miles removed from the launching site, in a secret hiding place, the miraculous Magneto shall make a mockery of their greatest efforts. Magneto can feel the irresistible waves of pure magnetic energy surging from him, and by exerting every iota of his power, he can direct that energy upward until it strikes the speeding missile, causing it to change direction, to falter, and to lose altitude, only to be completely and irrevocably destroyed, and the missile crash lands into the nearby ocean. Both the military personnel, as personnel from NASA, are confused as to how this could have happened. Every phase of the launch was A-OK, which means there is only one explanation, namely sabotage. But that still does not explain how, with all the security measures which were in place. The next day, the shocking incident of the crashing is published in the media to the general public, spreading the news of how yet another supposedly top-secret missile launch has failed. The sixth one to date, but the worst is yet to come. Later, that same day in the afternoon, at the heavily guarded fence which surrounds the launching site, a machine gun starts to quiver, seemingly by itself. As if it were alive, it leaps into the air and starts spinning around, firing wildly into all directions. The soldiers start to panic and run for cover, as to not get hit by the bullets. But this machine gun is not the only thing that seems to have a mind of its own. One of the massive tanks at the base is running amok, and within seconds the entire installation is alarmed. The general in command declares condition red and gives orders to alert the Pentagon as well, even though they have no idea what exactly is happening here. And then, as though by magic, huge letters start taking shape over the heads of the astonished troops. These letters are composed of the dust particles from the air itself, crafted by the still unseen and terrifyingly powerful mutant Magneto. The message he sends across reads the following: "Surrender the base or I'll take it by force, signed by Magneto." But the soldiers have no idea who or what Magneto is. One soldier asks the general what this means and if this is some kind of prank. But the general reminds him of the machine gun and tank which were just now rampaging out of control. This surely is no joke. From his laboratory hundreds of meters removed from the base, Magneto can tell the troops are startled, and the element of surprise will be in his favor. They are, however, seemingly not making any move to surrender, so Magneto decides to motivate them some by giving them another demonstration of his immense power. He uses an energizer he has prepared to increase his own mutant power, which will certainly leave the helpless Homo sapiens with no room for doubt. Within moments, invisible waves of pure and powerful magnetic energy flow irresistibly into an underground silo where missiles are stored. One of the lids opens up and the mighty missile below it starts launching. With powers the human brain is almost unable to comprehend, Magneto causes the rocket to crash into the sea miles from the shore, right next to an unmanned target ship. But still, the military personnel back at the base are not even thinking about surrendering whatsoever. Instead, they double the guards at every missile control center, and any rocket deemed to be a risk is to be destroyed immediately. The general knows that they will have to find this Magneto fast, because they can't have him control their weapons, and certainly not have him use those weapons against them. But one of his soldiers tells the general to look at the main gate, because there seems to be some commotion going on there, and as it seems, Magneto has already found them instead. A soldier at the gate tells Magneto to hold it, and that he's at the wrong place if he's looking for a masquerade party, clearly mocking Magneto's appearance, and he tells him to get out of here. Magneto responds by saying that it's a pity the soldier lacks the power to back up such impressive words, and that their puny weapons cannot stop him. The soldier aims his rifle at Magneto, and tells him that surely one burst right over his head will change his mind. But before he can even do anything, Magneto is already using his mutant ability to lock the rifle's trigger into place. The soldier isn't even able to fire a single shot, and the soldier right next to him can't even lift his own gun because it feels like it weighs a lot more than it should. Magneto then uses his absolute control over magnetic forces to create a repelling force field around himself, and simply struts past the soldiers guarding the gate, knowing that not a single one of them can harm him, not even the reinforcements which have been called in. This is simply a one-man invasion of a strategic base. Magneto, who truly sees ordinary humans as lesser beings, then confines the soldiers with narrowed down, concentrated magnetic waves, until he reaches the officer in command. And when he finally reaches the general, who is surrounded by soldiers, the general tells his men to stand down. And he says to Magneto that whoever he is, if he has something to say, he has 60 seconds to do so. Magneto in turn tells the general that he's wrong. In fact, he has all the time in the world. And he now claims his entire installation to be his, in the name of Homo Superior. This proclamation infuriates the general, and he tells his men to take Magneto down, but to no avail, because Magneto has him surrounded by one of his magnetic force fields, displaying his great power. Magneto's first objective has been accomplished. Cape Citadel is his. Meanwhile, back at the mansion, Jean Grey has dressed herself in her X-Men uniform and is absorbed with her own reflection in the mirror. The design of this uniform fits like a glove and is top-notch. It takes a while for her to realize she's being gawked at by her fellow male students, who are looking at her right around the corner of the dormitory she's in. Pretty annoyed with the lack of privacy, she scolds the guys, and Hank McCoy tries to cover up by saying they were all just coincidentally passing by, and tells her to not get mad at them. But then, suddenly, all 5 of them get blasted with a sharp, commanding thought. Professor Xavier demands their immediate attention and wants them to report to his study within 15 seconds, and no excuses will be tolerated. Once they arrive, Xavier commands their punctuality. He tells the students he just heard a bulletin on the radio which concerns them. Warren Worthington notices how Xavier is speaking with his voice, which means this is going to be very important. And Bobby Drake thinks to himself he has never seen the professor like this before. So intense and grim. Xavier tells them of the crisis which has occurred at Cape Citadel, which leads them to believe the first of the evil mutants he had mentioned before has made his public appearance. And this will be their baptism of fire. He tells them they have to go to the military base and defeat this evil mutant. The team rushes out into action, wondering who this bad guy is, and knowing that since the incident is at Cape Citadel, it must surely involve the missile head stored there. Bobby is already in his Iceman form, because all he has to do is put on his boots. For Angel, however, it is different. He actually has to wear a whole harness to hide his wings underneath his civilian clothes, which over time feels like he's wearing a straitjacket. Being able to set his wings free feels good to him. It makes him feel more like himself, ready to spread his wings and fly. When every team member is ready to leave for Cape Citadel, they get into Xavier's specially built Rolls-Royce with dark-tinted windows, which takes them to the nearby airport, and minutes later they board Xavier's remote-controlled private jet. Jean, being the newest member, is amazed and can hardly believe that Xavier is actually guiding this plane from the ground with thought impulses. The other team members, having been around the professor for quite some time, are already familiar with this. A short time later, once the X-Men have arrived at the Cape, Cyclops approaches the army men, who are using heavy artillery trying to break through the magnetic barrier which Magneto has pulled up around the base. But it is no use at all. Magneto is in full control of the installation while the soldiers are locked out on the outside looking in. Cyclops introduces himself to the general and tells him he represents the X-Men, suggesting they might be able to help out. Of course, the name X-Men doesn't mean anything to these soldiers, and the general tells Cyclops that they already have enough trouble going on with just one guy in a cornball costume. Even though he's ridiculing Cyclops, he asks him who or what the X-Men are. Cyclops tells him there is no time to explain. He respectfully requests the soldiers to hold their fire for 15 minutes, while he and his partners go into action. Since they have no other alternative left, the general acknowledges they have nothing to lose, even though this decision makes him feel like a fool. Cyclops assures the general he will not regret this decision, and he orders the X-Men to attack. Iceman passes some of the soldiers and his freezing abilities have its effect on his close surroundings, for which he apologizes, while the Angel flies overhead towards his target, rejoicing in the fact that they can now actually use all the training Professor Xavier gave them. The Beast leapfrogs over one of the soldiers, and being in a hurry, Marvel Girl pushes a group of soldiers out of her way with her telekinetic powers, for which she apologizes. Cyclops, who is the first of the X-Men to reach Magneto's barrier, has been using his I-beam to try and penetrate the force field. He receives a telepathic command from Xavier, who tells him to use more power. He does so, while being amazed with the Professor still being mentally in touch with them despite the distance between them. He increases the intensity of the beam and slowly but surely starts to penetrate. He then switches to maximum power, creating a pressure which he knows he can only maintain for a few seconds, but it works. Weakened by the feedback in energy, the startled Magneto can tell that some superhuman power is attacking his own powers. He finds himself unprepared for an attack like this, but now he has been warned, and as he gathers his bearings, he will make sure that he will not be defeated, no matter how superhuman this unknown foe is. Soon, however, he will realize that it's not just one foe that's attacking him. In the meantime, the X-Men are advancing through the base, with Beast carrying Cyclops, who almost knocked himself out in his effort to get them inside. Magneto now sees that there are actually 5 costumed youngsters attacking him on one of his monitors. But he is convinced that not even their combined powers will be a match for his immense power. But before he attacks them in person, he launches 5 heat-seeking Hunter missiles at them. He will let those weapons do his fighting for him. Even though Angel manages to dodge the missiles, they keep hunting him. They are too fast and are catching up on him. After all of Angel's maneuvering, the missiles are eventually within Iceman's range, who throws ice grenades at them and he hits them right on target. With the ice covering the missiles' nose cones and spreading across the entirety of the missiles, it prevents them from exploding, and with their guidance systems knocked out, they drop to the ground. But Iceman was only able to take out 3 of them. One of them was out of reach and is still homing in on Angel, who keeps on trying to dodge them, knowing that he can't keep on doing this for much longer. The Beast, who is acrobatically working himself upwards on the structure, yells out to Angel to come towards him and fly lower. Not entirely sure what the Beast has planned, Angel does what his teammate is telling him to do, and once the missile is close enough, Beast manages to grab the missile from its sides with its oversized feet, holding it into place without it exploding. And now Marvel Girl is easily able to wrap it with her telekinetic powers and hurl it into the sea, where it detonates on impact without harming anyone. And Magneto, watching all of this happen, is realizing he was underestimating his opponents. Despite their young age and inexperience, he now regards them as mighty antagonists and he will not make the same mistake again. He is determined to prove he is their master and makes his move. The Angel is the first one to come face to face with Magneto, convinced that he has found the enemy, and tells the rest of the X-Men to attack. But Magneto corrects him and tells him that he is a fool, because it is he who has actually found them. Magneto then hurls every nearby object at Angel. And Cyclops helps Angel out and removes all the magnetized junk with his energy beam. Magneto is now hiding behind a tank filled with rocket fuel, which he forcefully projects towards the X-Men, intending to finish them off in one fell swoop while they're standing closely together. He ignites the fuel, which will surely create an enormous explosion, but Iceman sees it just in time. They won't be able to get out of the way in time, but he can generate one of his ice shield to protect them from the incoming blast. And the explosion is massive. And with him now being dealt with, nothing will be interfering with Magneto's master plan. The heat from the sea of fire caused by the explosion is so intense that Magneto has to carefully walk around it. He needs to make sure to not get too close. But suddenly a beam erupts from underneath the ground and Magneto has no idea what's going on. Apparently Cyclops created a tunnel underground with his I-beam, providing them with cover from the impact of the explosion, and the X-Men now pour out from below and start attacking Magneto. Magneto tells them that they have not defeated him, and he says that he can still escape by flying away, which he does, and he leaves the X-Men encapsulated in the magnetic force field. The X-Men do manage to breach it, but by the time they do, Magneto is long gone. He could be anywhere, but at least the X-Men have beaten him for now. The X-Men then return to the General, telling him that Magneto is gone and that the base is operational and theirs again. And the General, who is relieved and impressed, tells the team that he will not ask them to reveal their true identities. But he promises them that before the day is over, the name X-Men will be most honored in his command. The Angel thanks him and tells the General that if America's security will ever again be threatened, the X-Men will be back. On their way back home, the X-Men get congratulated by Professor Xavier. He tells them that they have justified all the long hours of training, all the sacrifices they've made, and all of their dreams as well. And he then tells them, "Return to me, my X-Men." Thanks for watching this video, and I hope you enjoyed it. You can help growing this channel by liking, subscribing and sharing. This tells YouTube that the videos I'm making should be recommended to others and would be very much appreciated. See you next episode.